Hi. So in my last video, I talked about two poems and about poetry, and today I want to transition to talking about a novel. But it's a novel that it really feels more like poetry than prose itself. It really feels like a prose poem in the way that it's written. And the book I'm talking about is Beloved by Toni Morrison. It's an extremely well-known novel. It's probably her best known novel. It won the Pulitzer in 1987 when it was published, and it's considered the main reason, like the main work that was the reason she ended up winning the Nobel Prize in the late 90s, I think. And reading the book, it's very obvious right off the bat that it deserves its reputation as a classic, and it deserves all the accolades and all of the study that's gone into it over the years. It's really been analyzed by scholars and literary critics, and it makes sense because there's just so much subtext here. There's so much symbolism. There's so much depth. There's so many layers of meaning. You really can't just take it all in on one reading. And I know that I haven't. I know this is my first time reading the book. I just finished it, so I know that I would have to read this book multiple times to even begin to fully grasp all the different layers of meaning and all the possible interpretations that you could get from it. So basically, um, the novel is really a reflection on slavery and the consequences, the long term consequences. It's the plot is really about a woman who's an escaped slave in 1873, and she's living in Cincinnati with her daughter. Just the two of them. Her two sons had run off many years earlier, and her mother-in-law also has already passed away at this point by the time the novel starts. And basically, they're living in what is quite simply a haunted house, and the house is being haunted by the ghost of her daughter, whom she murdered as sort of a mercy killing many years ago when she was an escaped slave, and she slit her daughter's throat because she thought it would be more merciful than just um, going back to a life of slavery, which was the alternative. And the consequences of that horrible choice are what really makes up the bulk of the plot. Everything stems from that decision. So really, they're living in this haunted house, and they are well aware of the fact that the house is haunted and who it's being haunted by, and they just sort of accept it as a fact of life. They take it for granted, the fact that the house is haunted. There's nothing out of the ordinary about that for them. It's just, oh, we're living in a haunted house with the ghost of my murdered daughter, and that's just the way it is. And they sort of just live with the ghost, with this poltergeist disrupting their lives, which is every bit as strange as it sounds. But that's just part of the way this novel is. It's very magical realism is a term that's used to describe this type of genre. It's many things. It's a ghost story. It's a story about being haunted in a literal and figurative sense. Her daughter is clearly, literally represents the past coming back in a malevolent form. There's this idea the past is something just that you can never really completely put behind you or get away from. It's always the ramifications are always gonna be felt. And I feel like I should explain the title, Beloved, is the name of her daughter who was murdered, and she comes back pretty early on in the book after the ghost has been driven out by this escaped slave, Paul D. His name is Paul D. because they're obviously being slaves. They're not given proper names. So there's Paul A and Paul D and Paul F and so on. They're just given these arbitrary names, which is sort of the theme of their whole identity is really being stripped away. Your sense of personhood is being taken away from you um, when you're a slave. You don't have a real identity of your own. So that's also one of the themes that's being explored here. And so he and Setha is the name of the woman, the woman who murdered her daughter, who's being haunted, and she and this Paul D are both escapees from a slave plantation called Sweet Home. So they kind of share this. They have this kind of shared experience that binds them together, and he moves in with her, and they're romantically involved, and he somehow drives away the ghost. Something about his presence drives the ghost away. It's not clearly defined what exactly that is, what it is about him uh, that causes that to happen, or at least I didn't really grasp the answer myself, if there was one. Something my interpretation is his maleness has something to do with it, because before that it was just Setha and her daughter. Her daughter's name is Denver. Uh, so he has for whatever reason, he has this effect of driving the evil spirit away, but their peace doesn't last for very long, because it comes back in physical form as this girl calling herself beloved, which is what is written on the baby's tombstone. It was supposed to be dearly beloved, but they only had enough money for beloved, so this is the name she goes by. And so yeah, basically, it takes some time for them to really catch on to what her identity is, and it's always a little bit ambiguous what her motives and what her intentions really are. She's it's a little like a gray area, but it seems like it's a mixture of love and adoration, but also wanting to have control or to take over Setha's life. So it's sort of the feelings that a murdered child would have of hatred and love and wanting vengeance are all sort of mixed together. And the novel is just really soaked in atmosphere. It's a very eerie and unsettling in terms of the atmosphere that it evokes, but it's just written in this very lyrical way. And I really just want to read one passage in particular that really stood out to me. That's talking about the relationship between Denver, the daughter, and Beloved. So this is Denver will turn toward her then, and if Beloved faces her, she will inhale deeply the sweet air from her mouth. If not, she will have to lean up and over her every once in a while to catch a sniff. For anything is better than the original hunger, the time when, after a year of the wonderful little eye, sentences rolling out like pie dough in the company of other children, there was no sound coming through. Anything is better than the silence when she answered to hands gesturing and was indifferent to the movement of lips. When she saw every little thing in color's leap smoldering into view, she will forego the most violent of sunsets, stars as fat as dinner plates, and all the blood of autumn, and settle for the palest yellow, if it comes from her beloved. So that writing is just absolutely incredible. It's genius, frankly. That level of prose, that quality of writing. I had to reread that passage in particular multiple times just to fully absorb how powerful it actually is. Um, so there's certain phrases that just really floored me when she says the blood of autumn, and what was the other one? The way she switches from past to present tense also was something that struck me. Something that really works. She really makes that work, and it really contributes to the impact for some reason. When she says, the first sentence is, when she saw every little thing in colors leap smoldering into view, she will forego the most violent of sunsets, and it just switches to the present tense. It's just a very interesting effect. And then finally, there's a section towards the end. The novel sort of just close to the end of the book. It kind of just fractures into this stream of consciousness style, where first we're seeing the perspective of each of the three main characters, Setha, Beloved, and Denver, and we're seeing from the perspective of each one, and it really is more just like basically just a poem at that point. But Beloved's section, where we're seeing the story from her point of view is just really chilling and very unsettling. Maybe one of the most unsettling things I've ever read. Honestly, it's just very creepy. Uh, and you really need to have read the whole book to get the full effect. But I'll just read a little bit just to give you a sense of what I'm talking about. So here, this is, she says, "We are not crouching now. We are standing, but my legs are like my dead man's eyes. I cannot fall because there is no room to. The men without skin are making loud noises. I am not dead. The bread is sea-colored. I am too hungry to eat it. The sun closes my eyes. Those able to die are in a pile. I cannot find my man, the one whose teeth I have loved. A hot thing. The little hill of dead people. A hot thing. The men without skin push them through with poles. The woman is there with the face I want, the face that is mine. They fall into the sea, which is the color of the bread. She has nothing in her ears. If I had the teeth of the man who died on my face, I would bite the circle around her neck, bite it away. I know she does not like it. Now there is room to crouch and to watch the crouching others. It is the crouching that is now, always now, inside. The woman with my face is in the sea, a hot thing." So yeah, you get the picture. We're seeing things. These are basically sense impressions from the perspective of a dead child, a girl who's a ghost, who's remembering her life, all these different experiences of slavery, of being murdered, of her feeling towards her mother. It's just very spooky, very eerie, and it really stays with you. Um, so I feel like this is a very powerful book. It's not an easy book to read. It's challenging. It's dense. It's complex. It's not straightforward. It's not a particularly long book, just under 300 pages, but it did take me a while to get through, and I'm usually a pretty fast reader, but this book took time to get through because it's just challenging. It's a challenging read. It challenges you to think about things, aspects of history that are very difficult and unpleasant to come to terms with, and it confronts it in a very direct and honest way without sugarcoating anything. And the book is really intended, I think, based on what Morrison said herself, it's meant to be sort of a monument to the entire experience of slavery and what the trauma, the lasting trauma because of it. And she felt that there weren't enough monuments really, or enough of a memorial to what happened. So this was sort of her attempt to capture, to sort of write the book on it, so to speak, literally. And I haven't read a huge amount of books on slavery, but I would say that she largely succeeded in what she set out to do because it's a very powerful book and it's still being discussed and studied and talked about more than 30 years after it was published. And I think it's a great book, and I'm just going to close on that. And I just want to read one more excerpt that I think is important that sort of sums up what the main themes are about memory, if I am able to find it. So please bear with me for a moment. Okay, I'm having a little trouble finding the quote, but it's basically Seth is talking to Denver about memory and how and the way the nature of memory and the way the past can come back and can come back to haunt you. And yeah, it's a great quote. I just can't find it right now. But anyway, that's basically what I wanted to say about this book. I definitely recommend it, and it really is very beautifully written. And yeah, thanks for listening.